The name of the book I'm reviewing today is called My Early Life by Winston Churchill. After I finished reading Winston Churchill's book, A History of the English-Speaking Peoples, I didn't plan to read any more books by Winston Churchill. I was discussing Winston Churchill and his book with my friend Ashley Brilliant. The day after that, he offered to lend me a book written by Winston Churchill. Ashley Brilliant is a published author who has had a long career writing epigrams that were published in many newspapers in the United States, and he has written 10 books. So I decided to read another book by Winston Churchill on Ashley Brilliant's recommendation. The previous book I read by Winston Churchill was a history, and this one is an autobiography. That's one of my favorite types of books, is autobiographies. Winston Churchill was very fortunate in that he was born into a very successful family in Britain. His father, Randolph Churchill, was a politician and was Prime Minister of England. He did come from a privileged background, and he had his own nurse or nanny when he was growing up named Mrs. Everest, and he was very grateful to Mrs. Everest. Over and over he thanks her for the good job that she did at raising him. It seems like he didn't have much interaction with his mother, though he admired his mother and loved his mother. There wasn't a lot of interaction there, and with his father there wasn't a lot of interaction either. There were a couple of stories where he did have kind of a rapport with his father, and he really appreciated that time, but it was rare. He went to school in England, and he didn't really like it very much. One of the things that really bothered him was they forced him to learn Latin. He didn't like it. He couldn't learn it. It was just memorization, and he couldn't excel at it. I mean, he's a competitive guy. He felt discouraged in his inability to succeed in the subjects that they wanted him to succeed in. Here he did much better, and he has a really more colloquial style in this book compared to the history that I read, and he has some funny slang words. And when he's growing up, one of the advantages to being in his family is that he met many notable people in the British government and the British Army, and he took advantage of that. He was smart, and he kind of was able to observe what was going on. When he was in his teens, he went to Switzerland to vacation in the summer, and he was out on this large lake, and there's another boy there with him on this one day, and they went out in a boat and they rowed out into the middle of the lake. It was warm out there on the lake, so they decided to take a swim in the lake. So they jumped in the water and they were swimming around, and then finally they decided that they wanted to get back in the boat. Well, they looked around for the boat, and it was kind of a distance away from them. The boys were like a mile away from the shore. It was way too far to swim all the way back to the shore. Winston started swimming toward the boat, and Winston was a great swimmer. He had won awards for his swimming. So he swam after the boat, and the boat was moving away from him. And then he swam after the boat, and it was moving away from him. And he realized that there was a seat on the boat that had a back on it. And when the wind came up on the lake, the seat blocked the wind, and it pushed the boat away from them. So he had several instances where he was trying to grab onto the boat, and he just barely missed, and because it would blow away. The wind would catch it, and it would move forward. He put all his effort into swimming after this boat, and he just grabbed it and missed, and then finally he grabbed it, and he caught onto the boat. And he was really relieved. So he got up in the boat, and he rowed back, and he got his friend, and they got in the boat. They both decided not to tell the elders on the trip because they thought they would get in trouble for doing something kind of reckless and stupid. That was kind of an interesting story. You know, there's many stories where he is the champion of the story, but some of the stories are really instructive about things he learned about life and kind of little philosophies about life that he developed as he aged. After Winston Churchill finished his basic education, he joined the British Cavalry, which is called the 4th Queen's Own Hussars. And through his training, he became an expert horseman, and his love for horses lasted his entire life. Toward the end of his military education, he hears that there is some activity in the British Army going on in Cuba. He uses his connections through his father to get assigned to Cuba, and then he was able to go there from Britain and have his first experience in battle. Then he returns to Britain, and then he gets assigned over to India. He goes to India, and he has an incident where he has his shoulder injury. And the way that happened was they went on the boat to India, and they were in the little skiff going to the shore. As they got near the shore, there was kind of a walkway with these big rings connected to the walkway. But the boat was going up and down in the water. The water was really going up and down to the shore. When he got close to the shore, he grabbed onto this ring with his hand. The boat immediately dropped, and he was holding on, and he pulled out his shoulder, and it was dislocated. Of course, that's very painful. They did land, and then he got it reinserted in his arm. But this was painful for him his entire life, this shoulder pain. He was in India, and there they had a lot of free time, and he really got into polo there. There were all these competitive matches. He became very good at the polo, and he's very competitive. Even though his shoulder was still injured and it could be popped out at any time, what he would do is he would wrap his shoulder to his body so that it couldn't extend too far from him, and he still could use the polo mallet and still play. Later on, he tells about this one great match they had, and he got in 3 goals and won the match. He heard about the conflicts in South Africa between England and the Boers. He really loved war. He liked to be tested. He liked to be under pressure, and he had a lot of amazing accomplishments. So he wanted to go to South Africa. Well, he tried to go there, and they rejected him. The general there was Lord Kirchner, and he sent a personal letter to Lord Kirchner, and Lord Kirchner said, I have enough soldiers here. Everybody's accounted for. There's no room for you. And even if I needed somebody, there are people who are better qualified than you are to be in my unit. So he got rejected again from the top general in South Africa. Well, that didn't stop Winston Churchill. One of the things that happened when he was in India is that he was writing letters back to the newspapers in England, and they were publishing his letters, and he wrote a book on his experience in India. And it turned out the Prime Minister of England read his book and wanted to meet Winston, and he met Winston Churchill. Toward the end of their conversation, the Prime Minister said, if there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. So Winston Churchill wanted to go to South Africa. He'd been rejected. So he talked to the secretary of the Prime Minister, and he said, he made this promise to me. You think you could get me into the conflict in South Africa? Somehow through the Prime Minister's secretary, he sent a letter to Lord Kirchner and said, you have been assigned Winston Churchill to your unit. And so he pushed his way in. He did take advantage of his connections to get what he wanted. And then that was an extremely audacious thing to do, but he succeeded. Now, since he was a known writer, he was actually a war correspondent in South Africa. And there he had more adventures, more amazing things happened to him. There was a armored train that was going into the Boer country, and he wanted to get on that train. Winston Churchill was warned that traveling on this armored train was very dangerous. And so he got on the train, and it was sabotaged by the Boers, and it was pushed off the tracks. And so he jumped off the train. He ran up to the locomotive, and he started telling the conductor what to do, to push backwards, to push these cars off, and then he was going to connect the train and go all the way back to where they started. And so when this happened, the Boers actually attacked the train. There was a lot of chaos going on, and Winston Churchill was captured as a prisoner. And he was almost shot, but he was captured as a prisoner, and he was taken to the prison, and then he just hated prison life. He couldn't stand it. And he decided to escape. He was very smart about his escape. He timed when the officers were looking the other direction at night, and then he jumped over the fence. But he was like 5 days away from safety. He had this amazing escape route. It's really an amazing story. He finally did escape, and he wrote about it. And when this story got back to England, he became like a public figure. He became famous because England was kind of losing the war, and he had such a heroic escape that it kind of lifted the spirits of England, and he became like kind of a symbol of their defiance in South Africa. He had this one argument where he was talking about the war in South Africa, and he says, there was this conflict with the Boers. He kind of recognized what they were saying, what the other side's viewpoint, and he said, if they just surrendered, we would do what they wanted. So his idea was, if you attacked England, you have to let us win, and once we win, then we give you what you want. Because you see, the reasoning is that by attacking Britain, you have offended their honor, and they must win back their honor by defeating you, but then they will give you what you want. After he returned to India, he got on a lecture tour, and he made like 10,000 pounds, and he became rich basically. By the time he was 25, he was a national figure, he was famous, he was giving lectures. He was giving lectures in Britain and in America. The first 25 years of this guy's life are absolutely amazing. So my summary is that it's a great autobiography because he's such an interesting person. He's a man of action. He does all these amazing things, and when you put it on paper, it's amazing to read. His writing is good, and sometimes it's very good, but it's not brilliant, it's not excellent. It's just very good writing, but because what he's telling you is so amazing. Sometimes when he was writing, I would be following the story, and all at once I'd get lost. And then a few sentences later, I'd get back into it. And this happened to me like 20 times, where I would be reading it, and all at once I'd get lost. And in the past, I might have blamed myself for that, like, oh, you don't understand that. But, I'm old enough to have read so many books that I'm going to put it on him and not on me. Somehow he loses the thread. I'm not exactly sure how I don't have time to dissect what he's doing, but that was a problem that I had. But overall, it's a great book. Thanks for watching.